to the second panel. Any of you that were following the results of the FT Global MBA ranking yesterday, well, we had a word with the FT and said we've got this panel at 3 o'clock European time, and we want the 4 top schools from Europe, if they can all. So I don't know how they did their calculations this year, but guess what? Between the 4 schools with us today, from Barcelona, from Paris, from London, and of course, not just from Europe, Virginie, we must always remember your presence in Southeast Asia, in Abu Dhabi, and now in San Francisco. But this Centre Court Festival is really looking at this sense of schools, their values, their mission, finding the right fit. And so it's wonderful to be able to take this international spotlight and 4 world-class business schools. It's not just the FT. We all know that it's true. So we thought that we'd start the panel with just some general introductions. I'll introduce each of the panelists, the great friends of Centre Court. Virginie Fougiat, who is the Global Admissions Director, Financial Aid at INSEAD. It's always lovely to have you with us, Virginie. We have Sarah Vanos, who is the Director of Marketing of all of the MBA programs, including, of course, the flagship MBA at HEC Paris. Deborah McCandless, the Associate Director of MBA Admissions at IESE Business School in Barcelona, with that vibrant Barcelona colour behind you. And David Simpson, but I don't have anything about David's job title. No, that's not true. One of our readers wrote in and said, really, this time at Centre Court, don't make any jokes about David. No, David is the head of MBA admissions and other master's programs at the London Business School. So it's great to have all of you with us. We talked about just giving a sense of the institution. Perhaps, Virginie, so much has been written about INSEAD, but you've had such a close inside look at the school and these generations of students coming through. What do you love to share about the school, what it represents, those locations, and the sort of experience that our viewers would be able to look forward to?
What do I love to share? It's a great question to get started. Well, actually, as you kind of alluded to, I've been with INSEAD for a number of years now, more than 20 years, if I can count correctly. So what really strikes me is really the fact that it's international. Even when you walk in the French campus and you feel that everything will be written in French, but it's written in English, and then you arrive in Singapore and you feel it's going to be Singapore life, but then it has something a little bit of INSEAD, and you wonder, but why do I have this feeling that I feel at home, even if I'm on the other side of the world? Same thing with Abu Dhabi and San Francisco. So it's indeed this sort of being part of this community, regardless of the continent, because you carry those this diversity with you, and this eye opened to the world, regardless of where you are, and regardless of the amphis and the amphitheaters you are sitting in.
I know that you're doing a great job, because every candidate that I talk to, they know how to pronounce the name of the school, which is already a good place to start. That's equally true, I think, with HEC. Maybe 25 years ago, someone would have called it HEC. But I mean, Sarah, that same sort of international chemistry, bringing people from all over the world, what really sort of resonates with you about the school and its culture?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that as soon as you walk through the doors, and I guess just kind of looking around the campus and seeing a chateau from the 1700s, you kind of know that you're in this community that's existed. It's a business school for more than 140 years. So you walk in feeling like really proud, you feel the history, you feel the tradition, but then you also can kind of feel the way that it's modernized and changed through time. But most of all, I would say the community. So whether you're a prospective student, an admitted student, a graduate, no matter what program you're from, you feel support, you see so many amazing activities going on, you see students running the most amazing events, club events, our MMAT, everyone coming together to make these just memorable moments that I don't think could happen anywhere else. And then the fact that we're in France, I think really enhances them, because there's like lots of French touch events or little things when you look around the campus that I think really make you feel that.
Right. I mean, this imprint, and if we're going to take a year or 2 years, and of course, among the schools, you've got lots of flexible choices for that. Deborah, that idea of if I'm going to study the case study, you know, why do that in Charlottesville or Boston? They could be in Barcelona of all places. I mean, that's one of the many features of the school. What stand out for you?
Well, I'm an alumna as well as working for admissions, and I'm American. So there were obviously options for me that would have kept me more local and more comfortable. But I think doing case study in an environment like IESE, where you have such a global class, it pushes you out of your comfort zone in a way that you can't in a comfortable bubble, because everything is so discussion based. So all of us bring in that your professional background, your cultural background, and it really pushes you outside of your own cultural norms. And it helps you to identify kind of where your cultural blind spots are, the things that you might be missing just because it's how things were where you're from. And I know for me, that was the case every single class I took. And it's what I see when I talk to students today as well, is that especially with case study, because you know, you don't end up at an international school by accident, you know, as an American. So for me, and for at least from an American perspective, it's because we want to have an international business perspective, because we don't want to be limited by the US and how US does business, that we push ourselves to be in an environment where we're not going to be the majority, where there is no majority. So there isn't one cultural norm that gets to set the agenda. So to me, that's one of the really, really powerful things about being in a school like IESE, is because all of us are going to be pushed. And I think we're all there to learn as well. So there's a really strong culture of curiosity. So it doesn't even just stop with the classroom setting. This is stuff that impacts your social life, your professional aspirations as well. So we're always learning from each other. And even 10 years beyond graduating, when I get back together with my classmates, I still get that sense of community, that sense of curiosity and learning from each other. It doesn't stop with the classroom setting.
Right. David, a big reputation, but at the same time, an intimate learning environment. I mean, as you break down to your sections and that sort of interaction, of course, there's everything that London has to offer, but it really is that sort of close connection with classmates you've often talked about.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, for London Business School, it's all about the London spirit and a global mindset. And by global mindset, you've got to be interested in people. And as you say, we put batches together so that you can get to know everybody in your class and within the community, if you're as active as we hope you will be, and pretty much why we're recruiting you. So we work hard to ensure we get the right people in the room, and then the interest that the students have in each other and in the faculty that we bring in to teach, and taking advantage of London and Dubai, let's not forget Dubai, part of London Business School, are vital to the way that people are learning.
And how do you bring London in to then project it out on the global stage?
I think the vast majority of people come to London Business School. London is a huge part of why they're joining. So it's important that we do bring it into the classroom in an experiential manner. It's the thing that ties everybody together and anchors them. But we have the experiential programs, London CAP, for example, on the MBA, where students getting together in teams and going out there and meeting businesses, whether entrepreneurial or governmental or large corporates, and doing a live piece of work with them. It's on the doorstep. So again, also on the doorstep are all the recruiters, whether they're looking to hire one person for a lateral hire position, or stacks of people because they're a consulting firm coming in doing the same thing every year. They're just around the corner.
Right. Virginie, as I picture myself walking onto the campus in Fontainebleau and that mini United Nations that you were describing, I've got the gift store off to my right with books on blue ocean strategy and the typical t-shirts and sweatshirts. But there is an INSEAD t-shirt that talks about how INSEAD is you never sleep, you eat, you drink, you work hard, you play hard, and you pack an incredible amount of things into 1 year. I mean, talk about that 1 year program, because you know it's creating so many opportunities, careers, friends, networks. You really do pack a lot in.
That's right. That's very, very true. And since the origin, so when INSEAD created this MBA 60 years ago in France, the idea was to have the content of a 2-year program smashed into 1 year. So this is the origin was really mastering intensity, I should say. So yes, indeed, there are classes in the morning and in the afternoon, and sometimes late in the evening, and over the weekend there will be case studies and discussions, and obviously, as you said, is work hard, play hard. So it's also leaving some moments for networking, for sports, because we are looking for people who are well-rounded, and we know that when somebody has some sort of well-rounded type of life, they will have interest in their professional career, but also in their personal and their health in general. So we also make sure that they have access to the fitness rooms, and Fontainebleau is a beautiful city for rock climbing. It's well known for that. Singapore has other advantages. So we also make sure that people have time for what we call everything that is student experience outside the academics, but it's indeed everything is concentrated on 1 year, because this is the key differentiator factor for us, is really this idea of within 1 year you can get your degree and go back to the business world and apply what you have learned in the classroom. So this is the model since the origin.
Right. Now, I have to say, if I had been admitted to any 4 of your wonderful schools, I might have done something meaningful with my life. And this is not about, who's better than the other. I think to have all 4 of you together to really enable viewers to explore the different personalities and cultures. Because, I mean, Sarah, day 1 at HEC, and you could sign up for so many clubs, activities. You've looked at that 16-month model, again, trying to fit everything in. How are you using that additional time, internships, projects?
So exactly what you described, but I'll go a little bit more in depth. I think one of the things that you really start thinking about is, where should I do my MBA? How long do I want to take it? Do I want a 1 year, a 2-year program? What are sort of the checkpoints I want? How fast do I want to get back to work, et cetera? So we tried to look at kind of these things, and we tried to find kind of a happy medium between 1 year and 2 year. So 16 months allows you to get back to work a little bit sooner than a 2-year program. You can do a specialization, so a concentration. You can do exchange. So we have 40 exchange partners. You can also do an MBA project or capstone. You can do an entrepreneurial project. So many different choices. So you start with your core courses, which are traditional across MBA programs. For the first 8 months, that's what you look at. Then you also have the opportunity to do an internship during the summer of your program, or at the end of your program. So it's really about choice, flexibility, what's right for you, what are your career goals. Some students need a little bit more time to kind of assess. They really want to do that internship, that specialization. So we think that we're offering, everything that you can do in 2 years, but kind of squeezed into 16 months.
Right. As an alumna of the IESE MBA program, Deborah, I'm always interested, because on the one hand, you're creating this lifelong network of friends for many years to come. And yet it's not that the admissions team is trying to put little groups of friends together to work on these thorny business challenges. I mean, presumably there's a dynamic where all of that diversity in the admissions office is bringing together different voices, different perspectives. That's part of the fun, but the challenge, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it creates a really dynamic environment. Admittedly, you're never going to get along with every single person. And in our first year, we put, as our core curriculum, you take all of our core classes with your section, and within that section you're given a team, and we try to make that team as diverse as possible in terms of cultural backgrounds, in terms of professional backgrounds, and the goal of this is to give you a support system. I mean, IESE is known for being pretty academically tough, and this helps everyone to survive because they support each other through it. But having a team that's that diverse, it can also lead to its own kind of conflict, which is also part of the learning process, because managing that team is about understanding how to interact more effectively with people, how to work with groups, how to work cross-culturally, and deal with other personalities, with other cultural norms in terms of how to function well. So, you'll have backgrounds that are that are communications and accounting, as well as tech and engineering, all put together. And we all learn from each other because we come into these situations, especially because, again, with case study, you're dealing with real world situations. So we all have our own lens through which we understand the same situation. I definitely had times where I saw a completely different problem than the people that were on my team as a starting point. And learning from each other and trying to see things where other people are, it teaches you a certain kind of empathy so that you can understand where other people are coming from, because it's not, the goal is not to talk at each other, but to talk with each other and kind of figure out where those misalignments are. And that's definitely something that I always really appreciated from that environment is, you know, you're never going to get along with everyone, but you build such special relationships with this. And I find that even people that I wasn't necessarily close with, that haven't kept up with, when we get thrown back together, when our lives pull us back in the same place, you have this strong commonality that pulls you back together. It's like your friend from childhood, where you have this kind of understanding of the world being a little bit more dynamic and kind of a more cultural, being able to be a little bit more culturally tuned to get on with each other. So it's always exciting when we get back together. And one of the biggest sad points of COVID was when my 10-year reunion was canceled, and we're still keeping our fingers crossed for our 10+2 reunion come May. And I've already been talking about it with my classmates.
10, 12, I mean, it's a number, but the desire is there, I can imagine, given that sort of mirror that you're all holding up to one another. David, I've burdened you with so many unfortunate job titles. Some of them have been sticking clearly. I'd like to throw one more in there. Wedding planner. You know, you've got this room that you're going to fill with 480 people. All these tables that you might imagine as their MBA study groups. You know, how are you working in the MBA admissions office to say, okay, table number 4 over here, we've got the banker from Brazil and the oil and gas guy from Oslo and this crypto specialist over here. I mean, it's not, again, about, it's about how they all perhaps pull everybody up and all learn and grow together. But is there then a common identity within that room of 480 people?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, you spoke about, you know, the different nationalities and the professional backgrounds, but then you think of the objectives people are coming to business school for and the perspectives, and right down to how long they intend to spend on the program, with it 15 months, 18 months, 21 months in our case, with that flexibility. And there is a mindset that people will have as to what they want to get out of it. And a lot is about sort of trust and recognizing that you're here to learn from each other as much as from the woman standing at the front of the classroom teaching you. And it will be both classroom based and experiential, but you're building relationships all the way through. And I think we're just focused on trying to not necessarily, as you say, create an environment where everybody's skipping hand in hand, but certainly where you'll build long-term relationships that count. Some of them, as you say, could turn into wedding planning type scenarios, but on the whole, it's knowing that in 40 years' time, if you're thinking of buying a business in Japan, then you know who to talk to about, you know, that sector or doing business in that country. You refer back to your classmates. So whether it's friends, business partners, or just sources of information, it all starts at business school right from day one, right from the way we structure it, so that it is very much focusing on you. You know, it can be quite a selfish experience, business school, because it's all about me. How can I make me better? How can I grow? But actually it's incorporating so many different people that it very quickly becomes we.
Yeah. To go back to this idea of the sort of mastering intensity, Virginie, that you described earlier, and I really want to give you the opportunity to be very clear on this. Poets and quants talking about the role that the GMAT plays, or standardized tests play in this assessment. You know the academic rigor, you know the intensity of that one-year program, and yet you don't want a standardized test to define the candidate. So where is your thinking? You've traditionally had very competitive and selective test scores. How does that fit and is contextualized with all of the other qualities and characteristics that you know are so important to thriving at INSEAD?
Yeah. Your reference to the Poet and Quants article about the GMAT is I suppose, but the really so that we save time for all these panelists and for yourself, the GMAT is just one element. We very quickly move on to more important things in the application form, and I really wanted to kill that myth that with a 700 GMAT you stop to having chances to be admitted to in one of those schools. And really, it's what we do in admissions is a lot more than just checking the result of a GMAT score or a GRE or a standardized test. Our lives will be way too easy if that was just to check that. We really take a holistic approach and we look at all the elements. So the GMAT is quickly checked, the GRE is quickly checked, but then we move on to the stories and what this profile has done and what they have experienced in their life, professional and personal. And this is where we start to really get to know the person. We have the video interviews, we have the face-to-face interviews with the alumni, and we can better understand the contributions that David highlighted or Sarah, the contributions that we expect in the classroom, where people will not stand quiet and silent during during the course. They will have to participate, they will have to exchange, they will have to brainstorm and challenge their thinking. So if we can't guess that from the application form, obviously, if we can't understand that, we are doing not a proper job. Hence the reason why this GMAT is just one element, and when we move on to all the rest that I just started to list.
Yeah, no, so someone corrected me, because when I used to refer to admissions directors and officers as like yourselves as the gatekeepers, she said, no, actually, we're the gate openers. So there's my new hashtag, because of course, what you see the potential of that individual. It's not turning them away. It's seeing how they will thrive and
we take chances. Sometimes we take chances on profiles.
And probably a year later, and then saying that was a great decision.
Yeah, we do that. Yeah.
Well, risk taking, that could be one of the characteristics that you're looking for in applicants. Sarah, as you think about those sort of overriding qualities and characteristics that you feel are going to flourish, I like the idea of killing the myth about test scores and the role that they play. You're giving this gift to candidates, stepping back after 5, 6, 7 years of an intensive early career to really think about a path they've taken, choices that they've made. I mean, they could really enjoy applying to business school, given everything that it enables them to reflect on, right?
Definitely, and it's one of the kind of tips when I'm speaking with EMBA or MBA, sometimes they ask me, how should I prepare? What do you want us to do, etc. So one of the parts that we look at, of course, is the essays. And I think that's the part where you need to have a lot of self-reflection, take the time, but you could make it fun. So with a lot of MBA programs, you can go and take a look at the questions ahead of time. And I think it's great if you know the questions, you arrange with, your partner or your friend to have like a really fun discussion, like, why do I want an MBA? Why this school? And then it can be even deeper, like when did I have an ethical challenge at work? Or one of HEC's is, if I was to come to your home country, what's a monument you would show me? So it's really kind of brainstorming, talking about this. You can even kind of bullet point which topics you think could be the most interesting. And that way you have someone to kind of bounce your ideas off of, to say like, oh, wow, this is a good topic. So it can be really fun. I think you can do it even, just a nice evening, and then you can go back and genuinely circle the one that makes the most sense and write from the heart. And I think you learn about yourself. You think a lot more about your goals. You think about your plan A, your plan B, and no matter what happens after you press send, you at least have like a really clear picture of what you want as a next step, where you've been, how that relates to where you want to go, and how that relates to an MBA and the particular school. So I think that could be fun. I think once you get the standardized tests out of the way, that's probably like the part that requires the most preparation, study. It's the most stressful. The rest of the application is great. You get to think about your references. Who in your life have you worked with that could give you a good reference? You get to think back on your international experiences, your hobbies, how to articulate them, and how to show yourself first on paper. And then the really fun part when you do the interviews, and often you meet with alumni of the school. So it shouldn't be a stressful situation. I think it's all about how you kind of break it down and how you look at the next steps. And if you do it right, I think you'll show us a little bit of who you are as much as possible on paper, instead of just like, writing, being stuck at your computer. So that's kind of one of the ways I would say to enjoy the application process.
Right, we've all been living our lives on Zoom for 2 years, but of course, on a phone, you can hear when someone smiles. Can you feel that smile in an application, Sarah? I mean, just as you were describing that and that sense of sort of energy and enthusiasm, does that really jump out from an application?
It can. I think when it's done well, and sometimes people share, like we have an additional section, and I encourage you to use this. I'm sure most schools have it, because it's a way that if there's a gap, something that you need to explain that can jump out. We have the greatest things sometimes in there. Recently, we had someone explaining how they made an algorithm on how to find love. And then they kind of took it back and brought it back to the MBA and their achievements and stuff. And it's just so kind of fun and touching and different. And, I can't wait to meet this person. Hopefully they get admitted and I get to see who's behind this story. But yeah, I think there's so many ways to describe things, and maybe more difficult on paper, but usually we've also met our applicants ahead of time or had a phone call with them. So we're also able, whoever's met with them, to kind of explain a little bit beyond the paper. But definitely there's real people reading the application, talking about it, looking at your goals, thinking about how can we help you? Is this a good fit? So yeah, lots of them make us smile.
Right. Well, depending on how people's Valentine's Day worked out, they'll be looking at that algorithm. There is a big billboard ad advertising a weekly magazine this week, Deborah, and it says imposter syndrome is so yesterday, that we need to move beyond it. And yet, through the application, perhaps even that first day in school when you're thinking, oh, I'm surrounded by all these, do you think, is imposter syndrome a barrier to applicants really doing justice to themselves in applying to business school?
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone tends to think what they do is more mundane than it actually is. I mean, for business schools, we want to have diversity in the classroom. We don't want to have a monolith of all one profile. You don't want it to be just London bankers or just French consultants or whatever it is, because the point of this is to learn from each other. And if everyone has the same exact perspective, then you're not really going to take anything from the experience. So this is one of the pieces of advice I give to all of the students when they start is you're going to enter that room and you're going to think you're an admissions mistake. That is not the case. And when you're feeling down, think to yourself, there's a reason why we wanted you in that classroom, because you have something that's going to be different than the other people that's around you. And I know this is particularly hard for people that come from non-traditional business backgrounds. So, we've had some very, very different profiles that have come in, whether it's from medical field or military veterans, or we had a modern dancer who graduated last year from IESE. And, they bring in a special outside perspective that their classmates don't have. So don't think of like comparing yourself to other people is always going to be a bad position. This is the case when you're applying. This is the case when you're in business school itself, when you're looking for jobs, because everyone has different motivations, different journeys that they're on. And so what's right for other people may not be right for you, and vice versa. So, don't ever compare yourself, because you're just gonna look for the bad things. But I think everyone has something different, something unique to bring in. And this is one of the things to do with the essays is I think a lot of times people go wrong with the essays in that they write what they think we want to hear. And I will guarantee those are the worst essays because they show none of the applicant either. So that is the one part where you get to show your uniqueness. And if you try to look like everyone else, the standard profile, then you're just going to be very beige, like nothing's going to stick out. So I always encourage people, as Sarah said, like speak from your heart. You know, this is your chance in the written application to show who you are and what you're going to bring that's going to be different from everyone else. And you don't want to be like everyone else that comes through. And even if you come from a more standard profile, there's always something unique and different that you're going to bring into this that other people aren't going to have. So working to find whatever that is really important. And everyone's going to have courses that they're not as good at as other people. Everyone has their strengths and weaknesses, especially in a general management program where there's a core curriculum that will force you to take a bunch of classes that you haven't necessarily dealt with before. And that's, again, like why you have the teams. It's why you have the support system in the program, because everyone starts at a different point coming in. But you should never disqualify yourself. I mean, sometimes it helps to just ask someone else, like, what you bring, because sometimes you're a little too close to this topic. And I guarantee that you will always have something that's unique and special that's going to be unique to you that you can bring into a program, to bring into your professional life afterwards as well.
Right. And as Deborah sort of looked at that diversity, David, I mean, all 4 schools and many initiatives that you've undertaken in terms of diversity and inclusion. Just looking forward, where do you want that to go? You already have great diversity. Are there areas where you want to continue to reach out to be able to connect with people and say, no, imagine yourself in this sort of environment. It's not just the London bankers, the French consultants Deborah was describing. Are there more things that you would like to continue to push for in terms of diversity and inclusion at the school?
Absolutely, yeah. I think of an MBA class or the study groups or whichever sized group as a team. So a class is quite a large team, but there are roles to be played, team roles to be played by each individual. And we will always need the engineers, the accountants, and the consultants. So don't be thinking, I'm not a rocket scientist or an Olympic sports person. They're real life examples of people who come through the class. We need everybody. But in terms of diversity, it's no longer enough to have industries or even nationalities. It's that diversity of diversity. So it's our job to think, if this class is going to be approximately 500 people, I need this, 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 and this. It needs to reflect society and how society is changing. It needs to reflect what we like business and society to become. It needs to be supplying businesses of every size and scale with the people that they require. And that the more our classes can reflect the world at large and the real world, the better. So that means appealing to people of different means. So appealing to people who perhaps thought, well, business school's not for me, or that kind of business school's not for me. And I think all of us would agree, there's this huge untapped pool of people out there who are probably sitting there thinking, well, maybe business school, but I think it will be this. It certainly won't be that. We absolutely want to smash that myth and say, no, if you're made of the right stuff, if you've got the right potential, and you have the right character, you can be exactly what we're looking for. So I think we've incorporated, as well as marketing campaigns, scholarships as well, to help enable people to join who otherwise don't think that they could. So for us at London Business School, our Laidlaw fellowships have been important, and other scholarships we're offering as well, like in business scholarships, out in business scholarships. Some of it is about engaging with the world and building pipelines. Some of it is just about showing how important inclusivity and diversity is to us. And not so that we can be some shining beacon or different to the world, but we can show we're absolutely representative of the world.
Yeah. When I sat down with the Dean at INSEAD last year, Virginie, we realized it was the day of the 7th anniversary of being the Dean, and it was natural perhaps to ask him, what he felt had been some of the accomplishments he was most proud of in the last 7 years. I love when he talks about everybody at INSEAD is a minority. But he also talked about the Center for Business as a force for change, and this distinct value system. David was talking about the importance of diversity and inclusion. How do you then look at business for a force for change through the lens of the admissions office? It's not, well, I've saved the planet and I've eradicated poverty. How are you looking to get the sense of someone's value system that really aligns with that underlying culture at INSEAD?
That's really interesting, because you say business is a force for change, and this is business as a force for good. And I think this is really, but this is really interesting, because this is right, but it's still for a change, and hopefully for a good change. So yes, indeed. So Ilian has launched this a few years ago, and the idea was really to, in this part of our mission is to transform leaders who will then transform society, companies, countries, hopefully. So the reflection was really, how can we help with this idea that we have a mission, we know that we are training the future leaders of this world, and how can we contribute so that hopefully this is bringing more to all the communities, or the communities this person belongs to. And it can be a small startup, it can be a family business, it can be a multinational, or it can be a country. Indeed, some people will have very, very high dreams. But in any case, we all feel that every little things that we can do will change a little bit, potentially the future of the world, why not, or at least of a community. And we have to give back. We have to think it's not just, it's moving away from this, it's not what is in it for me with this MBA, is more of what can I bring to the others in the classroom, but later to my company. What can I bring back to my company? What can I bring back to my family? Because this is a life-changing experience to undertake an MBA. This is 100% sure. But how can we make it a benefit for the society rather than just for yourself? In terms of salary, income, yes, okay, cool. You have a higher salary than before, but what's next? What is 10 years from after you're back in the working environment? So it's not just right after graduation. It's 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road. What do you want to make of your life? And hopefully make good and have a good impact on society. And the way we assess it in the applications is usually by understanding how much people have already contributed to anything. And again, thinking that they can come together, help people to foster and have this idea of that together we're stronger, and that we can learn together. And that is something that we see in the application all the time. We read essays and we read life experiences where we hope people have had this sort of experiences or dream for the future around this. So this is seen in the essays, in the videos, in the interviews. We challenge people on this all the time, indeed.
You've drawn this beautiful circle because, of course, at the beginning of the panel, I mentioned that the success that all of you enjoy as among the top schools in rankings, the FT that published yesterday and elsewhere. And yet, with salary outcomes, phenomenal results, so many career options. But to really understand those values and perhaps, that contribution that you can make. I mean, Sarah, you've talked about the pillars of HEC Paris, sort of having 3 pillars. Perhaps you can share with the viewers, what that is and what that therefore says about the institution.
Yeah, so we have kind of our mission, our pillars, our values. We have all these things, but I think they kind of work and support each other. So the first, before I get into the pillars, I'll talk about maybe the most recent one, which is think, teach, act. So really thinking about teaching and then acting. With our pillars, we're looking at purposeful leadership, innovation, entrepreneurship, but really like what are these key things that the school is built upon, and then how can we embed them across our curriculum, and then what can we do to make sure that students can take advantage. So really looking at that like more concretely, we have over 25% of our courses that involve ESG CSR. So it's embedded even into core courses. So we don't just offer one course that teaches you how to be socially responsible or ethical, it's embedded. And this is a more recent change because we want people to be thinking about this from the beginning. So we also have entrepreneurship at the core of our pillars. So we involve, classes, we have specializations, et cetera. So we offer students different ways of kind of living this. And then we also want leaders who are thinking about their purpose and how that fits into the greater scheme. So yeah, I would say kind of in a long roundabout, because we have these like key fundamentals, key values, we have our pillars, but then we also have our mission, and they kind of all play together to ensure that students have opportunities to grow with, I think, their changing values, the changing values of the world, and then also result in, people that will have a great impact. And that kind of ties us back to the last part of our mission, values, et cetera. They're a bit long. In France, they tend to be more lengthy on these type of things. So, yeah.
And when it all boils down to it, Deborah, Sarah talks about CSR, which just is another area where IESE excels in. But if we take a step back a few years, when you were thinking about business school next steps, what questions were you asking of the schools, to get that sense of an alignment of values, of opportunities, there's so many different elements where we can measure the impact of the MBA at your wonderful school. So what questions would you suggest that our viewers ask, to find out for themselves?
Well, that is a very good question. I think for me, when I was looking at business schools, I talked with the schools, but I think what I found even more informative was talking with alumni. And for that, kind of what I loved about the IESE alumni that I met is, frankly, there was kind of a spirit of generosity I got off of them that I really appreciated. They were always really, really generous with their time, and very excited about the experience that I had. And I think some of it has to do with I think talking with alumni is really, really valuable because looking at websites, it's very hard to tell the difference between programs. There's a lot of core elements that are going to be similar from program to program. But I think, talking with alumni, kind of what they valued from their experience, what was special about, what were their highlights, what was special about what they got to do there, what was good and bad was really, really important to me. I mean, admittedly, talking with admissions people also great, but I think there's something special that you can get from talking to alumni that you can't always get from talking with just admissions people. And I think that feeling of community on campus, kind of what the institution values more than anything, is something that is, I always recommend talk with alumni for that. Because the day-to-day experience for the students in class is going to be way more important to what your life is going to be like for the length of the program that you're in, and what you're going to take from that experience as well. So yeah, that tends to be my best advice. I mean, I'm an alum, but I work for the school, so I feel people can always take what I say with a grain of salt. But feel free, like, I can always put people in touch, or you can reach out to people through LinkedIn cold and just see how people respond, and see if, like, who's doing the things that you find interesting, and who are the people that you'd want to be in class with.
I love the conviction with which you speak of their generosity. You know that deeply to be true of your alums, and the time that they will take to answer our viewers' questions. David, perhaps a final question for you. I muddle my mission statements. Business is a force for good. We've got Teach, Think, Act, change lives, change the world over on the West Coast. But if I left the Soho branding agency behind and I just sat down with your alums that have been through the LBS experience, what do you think they'd come up with as a mission statement? I mean, there will be multiple statements, but in a sense, what's resonated with them that really encapsulates the experience that they've had at LBS?
it's always going to come back to people and who they met, who they connected with, and who they remain connected with. We all talk about the impact we want to make. At London Business School, we talk about the profound impact on the way the world does business and the way business impacts the world. When you take it to an individual level, it's what alumni are doing, how they're doing it, and who they're contacting in order to get it done. I mean, what business school does, it helps you to make decisions, right? That's one of the main things you come out with is decision-making toolkits. It also changes the way you think. You know, it changes the way you make everyday decisions as well. And it builds a number of reference points in your decision-making. If they're aligned with a good sense of values from good people who are trying to make a difference, whatever they're doing, whether it's in banking or government or with a charity, then you will pick a lot of that up along the way, or you'll know where to go to. So I think it comes back to individuals and their value systems and the network and connections that you build. And let's face it, you know, friendship and fun as well. You know, you're doing this. This is 2 years or a year in your career where you're looking, hopefully, this is what we look for, way beyond the transactional relationship of what's my first post-MBA job. It's really important to me, really important to us that we're recruiting people who are thinking, where do I want to be in 30, 40 years when I've retired with lots of money or retired happy because I built a small business, whatever it is, we want people who are going to be reflective. So I think a lot of that comes back down to just people with self-awareness who recognize that other people are a hugely important part of their journey.
The Centre Court that we're holding in the early summer, we're calling it Voices. And maybe if I can borrow from what you've said, David, it's about people, because I think, you know, for the students, the alumni, yourselves just as ambassadors for the school, and all of you, you know, you've joined Centre Court, and I always just remark this incredible sense of belonging, inclusion, your enthusiasm. I talked earlier about you being gate openers, and really how you're looking to perhaps empower individuals for the next steps of their career. Well, Centre Court, we hope, plays just some small step on that way. Maybe just a quick word. I think Tori, if she won't be too mad with me, next steps, reaching out. Virginie, if you sort of said, yeah, one next thing to do to find out more, you don't have to have everything worked out, know if you're applying in the next 6 months, where would you start? Reaching out to the school, reach out through LinkedIn? What do you think is a good place to start?
I would start from the website with, we have email addresses for every single programs, and it's easy to find and to book an appointment with us. And it's a one-to-one consultation.
Got it. Now, Sarah, if Emily in Paris ends up doing her MBA at HEC, of course, that'll bring lots of spotlight onto the school. Thank you to Netflix. Where would you just add to that in terms of good ways to connect with you?
Well, I would ask her to bring Gabrielle with her. No, I'm just joking. Yeah, if you go onto our website, there's a section called Connect with Us. And there you just fill out a little bit of information that connects you with a person who has personalized knowledge for your region. And then she'll be in touch with you, usually within 3 days, to book a meeting, to talk about next steps, to talk about your goals and get to know you.
Fantastic. Of course, we'd all love to come and see you in Barcelona, Deborah. That would be a lovely way to spend the spring. Just good way to take that next step and to get in touch with IESE.
Yeah, I mean, I think probably a good first step is these days we're still holding a lot of events, virtual, and starting to get in person a bit. But I mean, even tonight, I'm going to be holding a panel with female alumni from the Americas, from spanning about 15 years of IESE alum, which is, but we've got a lot of stuff like that that's both regionally focused as well as industry or interest focus that comes up. And also, you know, I'm the Associate Director of Admissions responsible for North America, Central America, and the Caribbean. Anyone from there is always welcome to reach out to me. I have colleagues that are based around the globe. I'm actually in New York rather than Barcelona. I wish I were in Barcelona right now, frankly, because it is freezing here. But you know, our admissions team is very approachable. And I always recommend reach out to the person who's responsible for your region. You can find it on our website. You can drop me a line. I can also point you in the right direction as well if you're not sure.
Fantastic. And was it happy hour at the Windsor pub, David? No, I mean, there are so many ways to have that sort of first point of connection. Where do you think is a good place to start?
For me, it's website first, and then go through to virtual events. And there's some general events where you can pick up the basics and the points of comparison. But then there's we're trying to put on a huge diversity of events so you can pick off different angles. So tonight I'm talking with Zoe, who's the head of our head of careers, about our employment report and what are the trends coming through from this year's employments. But very quickly, the most important thing to do is speak to student ambassadors or any students. And I think there are two ways to do this. Either go through the channels that we set up, and we all want to know that you've done that as well. So in your application, you can show that you've done some individual research with our schools, but look at it organically as well. So are there alumni in your company where you work or within your extended friendship group? So see what comes out independently from your own network, and then focus in on what we can offer as well. And the important thing is to do this with, as much as possible, equal effort across the different schools that you're very serious about. So narrowing down, but still allow every school to have its voice so that you can make those comparisons and see which one might feel like home. Because we talk about fit and identity. Even after all these years, I'm never sure if I've nailed it in terms of what we are, but I know students who've paid the fees, had the experiences and the ups and downs. They are able to talk about it and tell stories from their classmates as well. So more so than staff, get to know the students and or alumni.
Well, good luck with the careers session you're having with Zoe tonight. I still think you're in the right role, David. All of you are. You're wonderful ambassadors for your schools. Wouldn't have it any other way. Thank you for joining us for all of these Centre Court events. It was another sparkling 50 minutes that we spent together. To Virginie, Sarah, Deborah and David, thank you for being with us, and I'm sure all of our viewers will be reaching out with all the channels that you've suggested.
Thank you so much.